Hi guys, I'm Chris.
And Mike.
And welcome back to this week's No Limits, a Mid-Trap podcast. What's new this week, Mike?
Not much. I'm good. I'm excited that we've got a Rap on Rap coming out this week. You and I just went, 30 minutes talking about some random topics about thrillers and whatnot. So more content coming for our patrons.
Yeah, in pre-pro, I kind of went heavy on Mike. I had this burning question. Maybe we'll turn it into a full pod about do thrillers constitute high art, and what their place in high art is, and we sort of went deep on it. So I think there's more to parse out there and discuss. So,
are they literature, or are they trashy beach reads?
Who knows? That's the question.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, what's new with you? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Actually, I golfed yesterday.
Oh, okay, a little fall winter golf. Okay.
Yeah. My friend Jeremy, he's a nurse anesthetist, he texted me and said, "Hey, I'm off tomorrow. You want to golf?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" It was actually beautiful weather.
Nice.
I don't mind the cold golf. It wasn't too cold. It was like high 40s, mid to high 40s. So
Ooh.
No wind, which was great.
I'm surprised because my experience has been the opposite. I've not been enjoying the fall winter golf. My scores are plummeting, so I'm getting more angry. That's a part of it, I'll admit. But
cursing? Are you cursing?
Maybe.
What did I tell you? When you don't curse, you play better.
Dude, that's why I need my podcast partner with me when I golf. But yeah, I don't know. Not as enjoyable. I'd rather have that nice
70
spring, summer, 70s, 80s, sunny day. I haven't been enjoying the golfing in the 40 degrees. But.
All right, well, maybe if we get a good you're off for like 2 weeks over Christmas. Maybe we get some decent weather, we can get out here.
Yeah, we always get that just random nice day or a nice couple of day stretch out of the blue, midwinter, mid-dark days.
Yeah, I remember like a couple years ago I was down for Christmas, and like on Christmas it was like 70 degrees, and I only packed because living in Ithaca, I only packed winter clothes for Christmas, and I wore shorts to freaking Christmas mass. It was so hot. It was global warming at its best. So.
Well, if you get weather like that, you know what you could wear? A Mid-Trap Pod t-shirt.
You could.
Because
great gifts. Great
gifts for the holidays. We are still giving away one Mid-Trap Pod t-shirt to our newest patron. I think we announced that last week on our Order to Kill After Hours episode. So still hoping to see anybody at patreon.com/MidTrapPod. And the next person to sign up will gift a free t-shirt. And your donation will not only help support the podcast, so Chris and I can keep doing what we do, it will also go to a good cause. Chris, I just put another 12 books in the mail to one of our troops currently deployed.
Very nice.
A care package of 12 thrillers. I think there were 10 Vince Flynn. I think I stuck in 1 or 2 Tom Clancy's, some paperbacks that I had. So 12 books on the way out to the front lines.
Very nice. Very nice. Have we hit that 500 book mark?
We haven't gotten there. We are hovering around 400.
Close, right?
So
we're at 400. Oh, we hit the 400 mark. Okay.
Yes, we hit 400, but I want to see if we get to 500 books shipped out to the troops.
All right, let's do it.
Yes.
So, speaking of literature and books, we have to talk about a book that we previously talked about. You had a very nice interview with, unfortunately I couldn't make it. I had some things come up, but with Eric Bishop and his book, The Body Man. And, we hope you guys have gotten a chance to get out there, buy this. It's his first book being published. And actually, so today's episode was recorded at the same time as Mike's interview. He sort of went deep, a little bit of 30 extra spoiler-filled minutes at the end, and we thought it was, it was cool. It was nice content. So, and I've had a chance to read. I'm almost done with all of it. Sorry, I had a crazy Thanksgiving. I wanted to get it done. I wanted to give you my final takes on it, but I liked it. I liked it a lot. What did you think, Mike? Have you ever really said besides it's a good book?
Yeah, no, great book, and that's why we want to bring you some spoilers with Eric. So right now, turn it off. stop listening if you haven't finished The Body Man, because Chris and I are going to get into some things, and we'll have Eric back on, ask him some questions about the nitty-gritty of the book and some choices he made. So, no, I loved it, and something you're going to hear I talked about with Eric was, and we like about Vince and Kyle's writing, is how realistic it could be, right?
Yes.
This is a fiction story, but come on. The Sanctum, bro? How wild is this idea of the Sanctum?
That was pretty crazy.
Like, is it just the mafia? No, it's like this international high-end cartel for the elite to get whatever services they need. I'm even talking like medical services. I asked Eric about how he came up with this idea for black market surgeries so that assassins and various organized crime groups could have their people patched up without being on the books anywhere in the world at a moment's notice. It's like this cartel or Sanctum is running some pretty nasty stuff.
It reminded me, again, we were talking about James Bond before the pod, but it reminded me of like Spectre and, you know, like this super intense, or, you know, Mission Impossible, like the Syndicate, you know, like these vast international crime organizations. And you could imagine like Spectre having something like that, you know, or the Syndicate having something like that. And, or, you know, you see it in these movies where they look into the underground, and it was just cool to read about that in the pages. And we haven't never seen something like that before.
Right.
I will say one thing. So when I was reading this book, obviously, he said he's written a couple, right? In his interview with you, this is the first one to get published.
Right.
I wasn't like critiquing more so than what I do with Kyle. Probably a little bit more because it was his first time around. But I thought the flow of the book, you know, went well, and the writing was good. I've read some, you know, Amazon sort of pushes these because they see that I buy thrillers. They push like the free, you know, thriller authors, the first book in the series. Hopefully, you know, there's 10 more. Hopefully they get me to buy them. They're all like $1.99 or whatever. And I will say, like, I have gotten pushed, and I've gotten, like, Tier 1 was one of those books, and I thought Tier 1 was very good. Another one I read, I won't say it, was not very good.
You're not going to pick up another one. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I was reading, and I was like, geez, the writing is awful in this. But I will say, Eric Bishop, pretty good. One thing I was picking up on, but I kind of liked it, was his attention to detail in terms of like naming things.
Yes.
And in the first couple chapters, you know, he makes a deliberate choice to name like the car that he drives,
right.
and he has like this the guy, the body man has what is it, both a Nissan and like another car that's like fancy. And then there was this one line that I thought was funny where like he's been being fed a Snickers and he's like, unlike what it says, it doesn't fill me up, you know, or something like that. Doesn't make me not angry or something like that.
Instead of just a candy bar.
Right, exactly. And putting those real world things in made it more, I don't know, interesting and entertaining to me. So
it almost brings like the fabric or the texture of the universe alive. You know, books can only activate really one sense. But when you do things like that, you can smell it, you could taste it, you could feel it, you know the size of that candy bar or that car, right? There was a car accident is a lot different than saying a Jeep Wrangler was going 80 miles an hour, had no doors on it, and smashed into an 18-wheeler or whatever. You know, you just picture that so much different than a car ran into a truck. So
right, exactly. You can visualize what a Jeep Wrangler looks like because we know what those look like.
Right,
yeah.
Right. As something else, speaking of the names that we bring up, I asked him, dude must have lived in D.C. And he said, no, but he did a lot of work in D.C.
Oh, really?
He spent a lot of time here. He lived in Richmond. You're going to hear about it. But man, he's driving down 123 in Virginia. They're going to the diner in Adams Morgan, Cafe Bonaparte in Wisconsin Avenue in Georgetown. He just nailed like all of these locations. And that's something we said we loved about Vince's early writing. We found so many connections to you growing up in D.C., me living here now for 15 plus years, whatever it is, 14. We just found all of that spot on. And when you get that right, it just means so much to a reader that's familiar with that area. And Eric got a lot of it right.
Yeah, and I would argue that probably, even if you're not familiar with the area, like let's say you read it and then you come to the area and then like you remember that book, it makes you think better of that author.
Right.
Because Vince never, to my knowledge, didn't live here, right?
I don't think lived, but I'd imagine spent some time with his research, his contacts. I don't know.
No, but like you could definitely tell Vince did his research on the city.
Right.
And
remember Term Limits? The helicopter
oh my
scene?
God.
Like, everything was perfect.
Yeah, and that's the attention to detail. Like, there's a lot of these authors that go to that detail. Brad Thor does this, and describing, I just think of like Lions of Lucerne when, describing, and I've never been to Bern or Lucerne, but then obviously that got me interested about it. So I went and Googled this stuff, and everything he said was accurate because he did his research, right? And it made the book so much more vivid. And then when I got to see it on the Wikipedia page and looking at pictures and his description of it, it was like, wow, like it, I imagine that, and now I see it, I don't know, just it's a little bit extra special.
Yeah. So it's the small details like that, but it's also the big details where you're like, I don't know if that's true, but it sounds really plausible. And that happens as well here with the oil rigs. Dude, can you think of a cooler setting for nefarious shit to be happening than abandoned oil rigs, like, I don't know, 20, 40 miles offshore into the Gulf? Like, he's got to be right that that's involved in human trafficking, drug trafficking, weapons trading. That's like undocumented real estate right there for you to be doing whatever you want.
And to me, that's cooler than some like private island.
Agreed. Right.
Because, I mean, yeah, I guess private islands exist, but like, I don't know. For some reason, I like the oil rigs better.
Yeah. Yeah. So Eric, I mean, you're going to hear it does say no research on that, but he's pretty certain there are certain things going on with these abandoned oil rigs being neglected. But, well, when there's something being neglected, it's going to be someone else's, den of thieves.
Exactly. So I guess I haven't gotten to the end, but where do you think the next story goes?
Right, and I was so glad Eric brought this up. There is more on the way, and I don't think I'm spoiling too much, Chris, but there's definitely a cliffhanger. For folks who, for some reason, are listening to these spoilers and haven't read the book or haven't finished the book, you're going to find out there is a cliffhanger, and there is more for the Body Man. And in fact, the role of the Body Man is also going to shift. What happens when the general public finds out, or certain elements in the government find out, there's an unelected official with the power and authority to influence the office of the presidency, obviously to protect it. That's the whole point of the Body Man. But the Body Man essentially has the authority and the resources to prevent the president from doing something or force the president to do something if they feel it's in the best interest of the office of the presidency.
Right.
And can the public swallow that? Will that lead to some murky, complex situations if someone has that authority outside the bounds of the law and outside the bounds of the electoral process?
This doesn't happen for real, right? Like,
right. So I was actually a little confused about it at first because the Body Man is a real thing. And it's usually, though, just an aide. Usually it's like a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old or something who carries the president's glasses, gets him a cup of water, usually opens doors sometimes, just someone who shuffles like papers. They'll have a clipboard, the president doesn't have a pen, hand him a pen, and then just scoot off to the side. Like in West Wing, it was Charlie, just one of everybody's favorite characters, but there is this thing called the Body Man that I think presidents going back to maybe Carter or Reagan, they had. But this is not that. This is a whole different game. So I was confused by his choice of the term the Body Man for this role. But I think very early on in the book, well, no, he hints at the Body Man, but you don't get until about halfway or maybe even 2/3 of the way through what Eric Bishop's idea is of the Body Man is very different.
No, exactly. Yeah. So overall, I thought it was, even though I haven't finished it, I thought it was a very good book. Very good first book. I'm excited. I'm intrigued to read more. So yeah, looking forward to part 2 of The Body Man.
Yeah. So enjoy this next about roughly 30 minutes. Eric and I chatting, spoiler-filled conversation about the book. Oh, also, it will sound a little weird because we recorded before publication. So now that the book's been out, by the way, huge publication for Eric. His book is already international. People have been posting on social media from many countries where they've taken his book or purchased his book. And so that's just pretty cool to hear somebody go from, full-time job, writing as a hobby, sticking it out over the course of years, pretty much a decade, and finally getting over that hump that now he is an international author, published author. You know what else I realized? Eric Bishop is our first 2-time repeat guest on the podcast. We had 2 author series episodes covering his book, The Body Man. So that's pretty cool. Congrats to you, Eric. You are not only a published author, international selling, you are also a 2-time guest of Mitrap Pod. All right, well, we're back here with Eric. Hopefully, publication day went real well for you. We're recording this.
I'm sure it did.
The same time as our interview, but we wanted to talk about some spoilers, giving you guys some time to get the book, breeze through it, and digest it. And now we're gonna pick your brain a little deeper here. So
go for it.
You come up with some cool stuff here, but I think The Sanctum is one of the coolest creations that you made. Where did the idea of this organization come from, and how close to reality do you think what you made in a fantasy thriller book actually matches up with something that's out there?
Yeah. So another thing I can thank President Obama for was basically under Obama, they made it illegal to run black sites. So I had interaction, and I won't name drop. I had interaction with a very well-known #1 New York Times bestseller when I was writing this, and I was talking about the black sites. And so I was messaging this person, and I'm like, man, I don't buy that, that they got rid of them. And this person said, no, I mean, they're illegal. They're not doing it. And I was like, well, then I think it was outsourced. And they're like, you're probably pretty smart. And so
right.
I was like, so that's when I created Sanctum. I was like, okay, I need an organization out there because I need the body man to be tortured. I need to have some bad things happen to the body man to get some information. And if it's illegal to have black sites, I've got to find a way around that. And that was an easy fix then at that point, because I believe in capitalism. I believe in the free market. And even though the Sanctum is a Russian outfit and they don't believe in that, they do believe in money. So and they're huge organized crime. And sorry, Vladimir, but we know it's true. I figured they would be I was also trying to find a good bad guy. And what would they do or what would they not do? So that's how the Sanctum came into existence. Where I decided to put the site for where the torture takes place, or the facility takes place, that was actually another thing that I just stumbled across in research, is all these oil platforms out in the Gulf of Mexico. And they really are, from what I could research and from talking to some folks, no one deep classified, but they really are used for nefarious purposes. Not probably many of them, but it's perfectly set up to be that way, because that's, clearly the cartel can go across the Gulf of Mexico in boats or whatever. And you have these platforms that are left there for years, and there's so many of them. We don't have the staff to have them, inspected on a regular basis, or patrolled or guarded. So I actually read, and the best I could confirm it was actually heavily used in the sex trade. That these platforms are used as a waypoint from people coming from South America, and they're bringing them up. And where they're bringing them is Atlanta, Georgia. And that, I'm not too far from Atlanta. I was just there actually Saturday this past week. But it's one of those things that you as a writer, you're looking for plot lines and story, and then you read some of the stuff and you're like, is this really the world I live in, that people are doing this kind of stuff?
I read that particularly about the oil rigs, and I was like, that's straight out of something like Brad Thor, where he's connected Right. He even said on a few interviews he can't travel to Russia or other places because some people, take offense to what he's written in some of his books.
Exactly.
But he's always on the mark. He's a storyteller and this is fiction. But you read one of his books and you almost feel more informed about something in geopolitics. Or like Vince Flynn, you feel more informed about what's going on behind the scenes on Capitol Hill.
Right.
Even though it's a fantastical story, when you had the oil rigs and the lawlessness and mentioned the sex trade and these black sites that we rent out, I'm like, this is happening. Like we might not know it. We might not have open, clear evidence of it, but you're onto something. Like storytellers of this genre often, I think, are telling stories about our world. And sometimes they don't even know it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to think I'm wrong and I made up a good story, but my gut feeling says this maybe not 100%. There's a really good chance this is how this works.
Right.
So there was something, and I read it somewhere again. I did the research for this so many years ago that I really wish I had that brain in my head still, so I could be great on these interviews, remember it. But one point in the thing, I mentioned Bush and the Gulf War, and I mentioned the Ark, which I read an article somewhere that said we had an old tanker, some kind of a tanker or some kind of a shipping thing that they converted to a prison, which I think some movies have done. I think there's some Hollywood movies that they've done that with Stallone or Schwarzenegger or something too. But so it wasn't that necessarily creative on my part, but I referenced that as saying, but again, that was a U.S. facility, the Ark,
right,
which they can't have anymore.
I think we did that with that's why black sites too, before we really opened up some of the facilities when they were first searching for places, like shortly after September 11th. In Southeast Asia, we had a few sites. I feel like a few of them were floating or mobile for a while.
Yeah, well, and there's so much corruption in this world, whether it's our government, other governments, and some of these third world nations. I'm sure if someone from the CIA shows up with a duffel bag full of $100 bills and says, we need this building for the next 6 months.
You got it.
They're probably going to say, a second duffel bag? They might ask for more money, but they're going to do whatever we ask them to do. So yeah, it makes for good fodder, but there's definitely, I think there's a lot of truth in it too. So that's where I came up with it. And I think I was onto something with that stuff, but the Sanctum heavily factors into the second book, I will tell you too. Since this is the spoiler version of the show. Basically in the start of the second book, the president starts Operation Red Star, and Operation Red Star is to take down the Sanctum.
Right. And you hinted that in the final chapter as well.
Yeah. And that's where we pick up in the second book, where there's a war going on. It's a secret war. It's a quiet war, but there's a war going on. And where I kind of make it interesting and try to draw it in a lot more is the Sanctum has direct ties all the way up to the top in the Vatican, in Russia, in the Kremlin. So then you're walking a fine line. Because are you going after the Russian president's people?
Is it the Russian government, or is it the mafia? Is it organized?
Well, exactly. Crime? So that's where, again, like we were talking earlier, probably both. And that's where we were talking earlier is when I write these, I want to try to make a good story, but I also want to get people thinking about stuff. And how does all this work? And how do these players, they actually get along or not get along? And, how close are we actually to World War III? We're probably already started it, honestly, but it's digital now. So, yeah.
Here's one. What about the medical offices and the surgery? Because that was really inventive, because I sometimes do wonder, you see in these movies all these shootouts, and then an hour later that person's walking around fully recovered, or all these bystanders. Is like having this black site for these undercover deep operatives. As long as you could pay the fee, you'll get an off the books medical procedure done, and not shoddily done in a garage somewhere, but at a high class facility. Is this something you think, like the wealthy global elite, something that Kyle Mills is starting to write about in his books with Enemy at the Gates? That seemed entirely plausible. This global elite that, as long as they splash the cash, can get emergency services like a gunshot wound covered up without anybody in the public or the press ever hearing about it.
Yes. So, yes, I think they're real. I have no evidence to prove that they're real.
It makes sense.
Well, I needed a logical, to me, it made sense if you have an organization like the Sanctum that's as ruthless as they are. They would shoot you and patch you up if they can make money off it.
Right.
So to me, it made a logical sense to just keep the same organization that has this, because I mean, you're just doubling your revenue streams.
There you go.
We'll torture you, and then the next day we'll strap you to a gurney and remove all those things, all those drill bits we put in your body. We'll take them back out for you, and we'll charge you $74,000 cash,
and then we'll reuse those bits.
Yeah. So yeah, they would probably reuse them. So so it was a necessity for the story in a way, but I tried to think through it long and hard of how would this actually, if I was a bad person, how would I do these things? And that's kind of the fun thing with fiction, is you can create all these horrific things of how you would want to do it if you were a bad person, but you never would. But you just get to tell it in a story. So it's interesting.
All right. I meant to ask you earlier, just even before we recorded, where you were, where you're based, because you must have done a lot of DC based research, either living here. You go to so many restaurants, and I love in books when they actually eat. You can read a whole book, and this is very true of Vince Flynn, and no one ever takes a bite of food. And Jack Carr started writing a lot of the characters eating because he probably knew, in the field on an op, like you still got to eat.
Yep.
You go to some really good places. You got the diner, you got Old Abbott Grill. You guys are out in Vienna. You've spent some time in DC, or?
So I lived in Richmond for a period of time, and I came up to DC quite a lot. I've not been to all of them there. So what I'll do a lot of times is I try to write about places I know, especially with COVID in last year. That makes it a little bit harder. Although I did go to New Orleans. I got out of New Orleans right before Ida, and I actually wrote a chapter of Breach of Trust at Cafe Du Monde the night before the hurricane struck. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, I try to get to all the locations I can, or even places I've been. To me, I'm writing another book. I started another book. I'm not writing it now, but I got about a third of the way done through. It's a spawned from a character in The Body Man, and I'm writing this story about this female assassin. And I took part of this chapter I was writing at the Eiffel Tower from a story I experienced when I went to the Eiffel Tower when I was, I guess, 19 years old. And so what's happening to the character mirrored what happened to me. And most people wouldn't know that, of course. So I was able to take my real experience and give it to a character. And I changed it. I made it a lot cooler than my life is, clearly. But anytime I can put those nuggets in there, it's something I read back on after, or stories. I was telling you earlier in the interview that I have a friend that I kill in The Body Man, but he has a ton of good stories. He was a veteran. He was in the Iraq War. And man, if I can, if people agree to it and want their stories in there, if I can take someone's real story and put it in there, of course, it will lend authenticity. But it's also something they can have to go back and be like, hey, my story about what I did, it's in Eric's book. I need stories. I need to make up stories. And also, if I can include people that I know, or if I run a contest, I know how cool it is myself to have, my name in a book, my name in a Jack Carr acknowledgement or whoever it might be. To me, that's super cool. Most people feel that way. So if I'm going to use a name, I might as well put someone in there that's going to get something out of it at times. And then if I can have a story that someone shares with me and says, yeah, put this in a book. If it's a cool story, then
if it's cool, right?
Story.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I spent a lot of time in DC for sure. And then a lot of it, though, I'll just real quick finish that thought process, is if I don't know the area, or if I've not been to that city, I'll just try to do as much. And sometimes it's quick, one night, because I don't have time to sit there for a month and watch documentaries and all that. But try to get online and see as much. And then Google Maps is like the greatest thing in the world.
Right.
You can literally drop yourself in on a plaza at a park bench.
You got all that right about DC. Like you were going down 123 in Vienna, or another one you're in Georgetown, Cafe Bonaparte. Like I'm passing these places going to work every day. I literally could feel where I was in the city when reading your book. That's why I thought you might have lived here, because everything you got right.
I did get one. So I spent a lot of time. So I lived in Richmond. We had an office up in Fairfax. So we took 123 frequently.
Right. Yeah.
And so that one I used to get stuck on to avoid 85 or 95. Sorry. I was on 123 frequently.
Yep,
but
that makes
again,
sense.
some of that's just for, hey, I got to put a place in there. And if I can, I think it becomes more authentic if I can work off my memory or where I've been versus Google Maps or whatever. So, and then, I get to share some of my story through the written word, which is, it's cool. I don't know if people think it's cool, but I think it's cool. So,
yeah. Hey, just not to take too much time. You mentioned one of your female characters. I loved, you had Mercy the Assassin, kind of giving me Donatella Rom vibes from Vince's work. But then you also had Stone, who, even though she's the rookie, man, she can hold her own, and she had some sass. And I love the zingers with her and Payne. And how hard was it for you to write female characters in that way? But you created two real badasses that have the skills to back up. They could talk the talk and walk the walk. How'd you craft them?
Well, thank you for that, first of all, because I'm a little more intimidated writing a female character only because I'm not female. So I know a lot of females, but and a lot of times guys get it wrong. Guys really don't know what a woman's thinking. They might think we know what they're thinking. It's probably the opposite. So that's what I do with the characters. What's the opposite of what? Probably no, not really. But no, I wanted to create. I knew who Eli was going to be before I knew. I knew I was going to give him a female character, and he was going to be pissed about it. He wasn't going to like that he's got the probie with him.
Right.
Doesn't like that at all. But I wanted to craft someone that could stand up to his bull, basically. And that drew it right back at him.
Oh, she did.
Talked about his dad's music when Whitesnake came on and stuff like that. I just wanted to throw those zingers in there. A, because I find them entertaining, and, B, because I think it comes across as authentic, which is what I want. Again, like we were talking earlier, the worst thing you can do is write a one-dimensional character that has no personality, that you're not rooting for or rooting against. Sometimes villains are the best ones to write because you can give them no moral compass. You can have them do whatever they dream, because the Mitch Rapps of the world, or the Jack Ryans of the world, all that. Well, they do have to live within this box of social norms and moral right and wrong. You don't have to have that necessarily when you're. So sometimes villains can be more fun because you can take the gloves off. I don't know. To me, just writing characters is fun. And if I can create a new one and it connects, and Mercy is one that a writer a while ago read, and he said, give her own book. I loved, and she's not in the Body Man very much. I needed a female assassin. How do you get close to some of these people? Well, the world goes around because of sex. So you have an attractive woman. She can pretty much get what she wants from a man. It probably shows how weak and ridiculous a man is, but that's what we are.
And then she can stab you with an ice pick.
And she could Sharon Stone basic instinct you anytime she needs to, basically. Yes.
Yeah, I would love the backstory of her, because I was wondering, she was kind of dropped in as this experienced assassin. They say the best in the world at sometimes. And again, that's just an opportunity to build out that story.
So I will tell you, I'll give you a super secret hint. When I wrote her in The Body Man, she was a minor character. Right. So I always come up with an idea for the minor characters, but it's not Chris Haughty that will give you what happens to them after the fact, and he probably has to think through it pretty. That
was really creative what he did with
it. Was extremely first. That's the first time I ever saw that, and I was like, "This is brilliant."
It was,
and I told him that. Chris is a great guy, but so for Merci, I did actually end up having to figure out to do another project where she came from, and her backstory is. It's horrific. It's amazing. And I think people will say, I can understand why she kills people. Right. You go, girl.
Okay.
I give her a good reason of why she does what she does. Okay. And as flawed as she might be in The Body Man, she does have a moral compass. She has a line she won't cross. That's really the fun part of writing for me, is trying to figure out what people's lines are. Again, they can't all be the same. So you have to have these different characters. You have to keep them straight, which that's the harder part sometimes. But sure is a heck of a lot of fun. And Merci is a fun. Cat was a super fun. And some of the times I was worried I might go crossing the line with her. There's a story that happens with her in the high school that she's telling Eli about. It's how she got her nickname. And when I first wrote that, I was just like, ooh, man, is this one going to go over okay? Is this one going to get me in trouble? But the other thing I did with this book that I didn't always do with my first couple books is I said, I don't know, I was trying to have some kind of I grew up with a very Christian background, and I'm a Christian person, but I tried with the first couple of books to keep things as clean as possible. It wasn't Christian fiction, not anywhere near there, but there was also very few bad words. There was, just my kids are going to read this one day. With The Body Man, by that point, I had grown a lot as an author, and I've read so many books over the years. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be true to the characters for this book. So if I think this character is going to blast this person with a very bad word or very bad phrase, then that's what they do. Is my kids read this one day? Well, they're not going to read it now because I've told them they can't read the book. Yeah, they'll read it one day. My mom's read this book, I don't know how many times, and I've waited for my mom to be like, my God, what did you say, Eric? No, I get the opposite. Oh my goodness, that was so good. I'm like, oh, did you realize what she just said? Well, okay, cool.
You got to stay true to character, though.
You do.
That's really important.
Really and if important. I get past mom, then screw what everyone else thinks, And if mom's okay with this,
approval, right?
It's dedicated to mom, so
yeah. Now we can publish it. Now we can go to print.
Absolutely.
Something I meant to ask you earlier: the cover drop. I remember when you first posted it. I could just tell personally. I was so happy of how excited you were. What was it like getting that cover? Because that cover is bold, it's crisp, it's
badass,
harrowing, it's awesome.
Badass cover.
Was that the Force Poseidon people?
Yeah, Force Poseidon designed the cover in-house. The cover and covers sell books, so I'm hoping when people see those books, they buy them for the cover, and then I would like them to read the words and go, well, these are really good words too, honestly. But the cover was super. The whole thing's kind of surreal. You work so hard to get to this point, and then when things start happening, you almost do pinch yourself a little bit. And I remember that the day I saw the cover, I was just kind of like, whoa, because there's really good covers out there now. So I'm not knocking any of the covers I see, but there's sometimes I'll see a cover and I'll be like, it doesn't make me want to read the book. It's an okay image. And then some of the times you'll see covers that you're just like, wow, I got to read what's inside there. And I really think with this one, they nailed it. They nailed the cover in this one really does give you a glimpse of what the book's about too. It's not just a cover that's drawing you in, but has nothing to do with the narrative.
Right.
No, this one. And they did allow me to give some feedback. I was fortunate that I didn't have final approval or anything like that. But I kind of gave some thoughts on what I thought would be on the cover. And there was a couple iterations of it until they got to this final one. And once the final one, when I saw it for the first time, I'm like, you don't need to change anything. I hope they go with this one. I'm looking forward to the day the cover's sitting up here, a whole stack of them on my shelf here behind me. So
I was going to say, have you gotten a physical print of this? Where's the live unboxing? Cause we're going to need that video.
I know. And I will gladly share that. So the only, if I can get in my Kindle here.
I did on my tablet though. When you sent me that PDF,
that's all I got right now still.
It looks cool on social media, just seeing the picture of it and on the website and on Amazon. But the minute I opened it on my tablet, and not my Kindle with the e-ink, but my tablet that has the full high-res screen.
As the high-res, yeah.
And the colors just popped. It looked effing incredible.
It looks spectacular. They did it great. And the publisher even said that. They said the red's really going to pop. Because the first version I had was like a PDF. And they came back and said, look, when you actually get it on a digital version, you're going to really be like, wow.
It's so true.
No, I did. I think I'm getting a copy soon. So yeah, I will definitely, being me posting stuff online and doing videos and being stupid like I am at times, I'll definitely let you guys know, and I'll be posting some. But yeah, that's kind of the next thing I'm looking forward to. So it's really cool to get the digital version. It's really cool to, get my acknowledgments out there. The acknowledgments were one of the most fun parts of the book, and they're ones that I've tweaked probably the more than the book, honestly, in the last 6 months. And I've sent back multiple files going, can we change it one more time? And they're like, yes, Eric. It's like, they're probably like, geez. I wanted them to go in the front of the book. And I don't think the publisher would be mad that I say this. But they were too big, and they just said, they're going to go in the back. And I kind of was trying to push to get them in the front. I know their reasoning behind it, and I don't disagree with their reasoning, but I hope people read the acknowledgments first. That's why I want them in the front of the book. I intend that I have a 3-book contract. I intend that The Body Man is the start of something amazing, but you never know how life's going to turn out. So if I have one book out in my life and it's The Body Man, I want to be able to thank people, because I hope people realize the sincerity when I say it is, I didn't get this book published because of Eric Bishop. I got this book published and I got to this point because other people believed in me. Other people helped me. And to me, this is my chance to say thank you. Again, in the off chance, might probably be a smaller section, maybe but I don't know, maybe my acknowledgments in the second book will be bigger. I don't know.
No, it was tasteful. And I know that's something Jack Carr did. I think he was the first one where I read his acknowledgments and I was like, man, just he's down to earth. And it meant one thing to have the book published, but it meant another to have it published and be grateful and thankful to the people who helped you get there. And that same feeling I saw when I read through his acknowledgments came through with yours, that it was heartfelt. The people deserved it. And you were going to make sure those pages got into the final print.
That was one of the first questions I asked. I said, is acknowledgments after the deal was signed and everything, what's the rules on acknowledgments? And they're kind of like, what do you mean? Like, do I get to write what I want for acknowledgments? Like, yeah, why? I'm like, I don't want like one paragraph. I have a lot of people to thank. And that was an important one for me. That was really important to be able to say those thank yous, just to again show those people that, man, I remember those things you said to me. I remember that support. And my friends and family, I interacted with an author recently. I'm drawing a blank who it was, and now I remember who it was. I'm reading his book now. That kind of definitely made me sad, as he said his family and friends have not been supportive in this book. And I tell you what, I've had the opposite experience. My friends and family have been over the moon, encouraging and just there in my corner. And man, it's a lonely road to walk, because this is, write your own book. It is a lonely thing. I mean, it's until you give that draft to someone or whatever, you're doing it completely on your own. And then you're bringing in hopefully good people that can help make it even better. But it can be a very lonely thing. And so to not have that support when that book comes out, or when you've gone to all that effort, that's discouraging. So I definitely wanted everyone to know. And I had read Jack's acknowledgments in the past, and didn't have that many people to thank as Jack did, but his bleed through that he is 100% who he says he is. He's a grateful veteran who is getting to live his dreams. He's getting to thank people for all their support. And he wants them to know how much they mean to him. So that to me is really one of the top things in this process. It will be really nice to have a physical copy in my hands. It'll be really nice to do some events. I haven't, with COVID, with everything going on, I've not set anything up. I might do something in a couple of weeks, even if it's just local. I was going to do some stuff, maybe up in New York and a few places. Then New York started putting a bunch of restrictions in place. Right. I just said, you know what? If I'm going to do an event, I want it to be a real event. I don't want it to have, a lot of rules in place.
Where people can't interact.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been the hardest. I mean, that's been weird. My first 3 years of writing, or first 3 years that I was going to writing conferences after I'd written some books, it was so cool to go to the events. In the last 2 years, there's no more events, and they're starting to pick up now. People are starting to do them, but it's still hit or miss. I'll be grateful when we're back to a degree of normalcy where you can actually go and meet people. And I'm definitely for you and Chris, even if you guys made it to Thriller Fest next year, it would be a great experience for you.
Yeah.
You never know.
Someone else brought that up, actually, someone that we interviewed, and we were like, whoa, never considered that. But
you can keep this part here I'm about to tell you, and you can play it back for him and use this as a plug. David Brown buys drinks, because David bought me a drink. So David definitely owes you guys drinks.
Oh, and then we're absolutely in there. That's it. That's the clincher. You just close the deal.
Close the deal on that one.
Oh, that's funny. Hey, thanks for spending so much time with us. And
I'm honored to do it.
I hope Pub Day is everything you hope it'd be. And Body Man is so good that I expect it'll be an awesome day for you.
I appreciate that. And I'll look, hopefully I'll have a reason to come back on. So.
All right. Take care. And thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Have a great night.
All All right, guys, we hope you enjoyed that spoiler-filled discussion Mike had with Eric. What a great guy. Nice to chat it up.
Right. If you want to hear more from Eric, he did a great podcast on the comm majors as a guest. You know our friends Brian, Jim, Katie from the comm majors, who we've done some podcast work with. They invited Eric on to talk about his book, and they talked about their favorite movies, and yeah, really cool discussion. He talks more about his journey to becoming a published author with the comm majors, so I would check out that episode that aired maybe a few weeks ago, sometime in November. That is the Comm Majors podcast.
So next week, we will be either coming with you the first part of Order to Kill. No, not Order to Kill. We just did Order to Kill.
Enemy
of the State.
Not at the gates.
Not to be confused with At the Gates. Enemy of the State, yes. Or an interview. So don't quite know. We're up in the air. But definitely, if you haven't read Enemy of the State or you want to freshen up, go ahead and read that because we're going to be discussing it either not next week but the following week. So again, we have to thank our patrons, our special operator Sherry F., our special agents George, Matt, Don, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark. Subscribe, rate, and review using your favorite podcasting platform. You can find us at mitrappod.com or on Twitter and Instagram at mitrappod. And as always, just let Mitch be Mitch. Just a disclaimer, this podcast is not affiliated with Vince Flynn, Kyle Mills, or Simon & Schuster, but thank you to them for bringing us the wonderful world of rap. And the music soundtrack is Guerrilla Tactics by Raphael Crooks.